Welcome back to Day at the Dude Ranch. Yes, we're still working on the 5-string multi-scale bass guitar, and we're making doorstops. Look at that. Woo! All right. So we're going to do some neck shaping and fretting and all that jazz. Here we got it, making the template for the headstock. And just getting that thing all shaped out. Now, I am mixing it up a little bit again, so we'll have a lot of the high-speed stuff just to cover some of the mundane, and then I'll do a little live-action type narration. Yeah. So we'll get into the frets here pretty soon. That's going to be fun. But again, just trying to get a visualization of what the headstock's going to be and getting the overall profile shape here of the neck. We're going to go pretty thin on this one, just because we can. Okay, and just double checking my measurements. Remember, I am doing this one in millimeters, so we got 940 by 864, and I'm just marking them down, and I'm getting as close to the edge as I can on the 940, and then watch, I'll do the same thing on the other side. I got a little trick for that. First thing is we want to establish where our perpendicular fret's going to be. With a fan fret, you want that. And here we're going with 9th, just because it's kind of a tradition. It seems to work. And now I'm doing the 864. So what I did first, I lined up where the 9th fret is going to be on the ruler. And then that's established where my 0 fret, etc. are. And after I've made pencil marks, now I'm just scoring the lines with the X-Acto knife and then coming in and etching them with the saw. And then I'm going to groove them a little bit with the triangular file. So I'm doing all of this because the fretboard is still pretty thick, and I just want to make sure that if there's any scars or blade drift that I take care of them now, because I'm going to be sanding it down later. You'll see I did patch on the 24th fret. See my tape and super glue and the little darker area on the 24th fret. Made that work. And that's what we're doing, just taking our time here. If I did this in real time, it would have been about 4 hours, and that's just too long to sit down and watch a YouTube video, I think. Now we're going to go for the actual slot depth. And on this, you see I did the little tape trick. Doesn't keep you from cutting too far, but it does kind of help. And I like to put my dots in before I do all the radius sanding. As long as it's a small radius like this. I say small, what I mean is a slow arc. We're doing a 12-16 combo. If I was doing a 9.5 radius, I'd probably do it a little bit of the radius sanding first, just so I wouldn't grind my dots down. And here we go. It's kind of interesting. We've got a rosewood fretboard and we're doing black dots on it. It really gives it a neat look. You'll see later, especially once we get the oil on there. I never would have thought of it, but that's what the customer wants. And now this is the trick here. See, I'm using the flat bar, my fret bar, and notice how I'm going kind of angulared. Once I get the 16 established and the 12 established, now I got to make them groove in together. And that's what that bar does for me. You got to think of a combination radius as actually a conical thing. So here I'm just cleaning the slots up, and then again getting an extra little groove going with the triangular file. And this helps the frets go in. I'm giving this to you in real time so you could see just how slowly I'm doing this. And I'm just, again, just making sure that I don't get any drift if at all possible. Now, even though I've got the fretboard pretty well oiled up, I still like to keep it clean as I go. This stuff right here is the trick. Now what I've done is I've sliced that popsicle stick into a really sharp edge, and then that's just wood glue, and that's just filling in the gap, and it creates like a kind of like a vacuum, just sucks that fret in there for me. And this is stainless steel wire fret, and notice how I'm crimping it, how I cut the edges. You want to cut the same way as the tang. You don't want to roll that over at all, because these aren't pre-cut. I'm just working off the roll. Now I'm not really setting the frets in with the hammer. I'm just getting them to lock into place a little bit. Then I'm going to be using that press. So here we go. And here's a little trick that I've learned. Of course, wipe them off real good. Now this other rag, I've got a little bit of mineral spirits. Helps clean it up really well. Keeps from getting the glue boogers. And now I think you guys have seen me do this before in a video. Now I go over with the rocker. Most of the time we would do this later when we're doing the crowning. And I will do it then. But I like to make sure, just in case, like this. See, that just had just a little bit of wobble. Now I'm finding a little bit of wobble on the next one. Or was that the 4th fret, I think? And you just give them a little encouragement to make sure that they're set in place. It's a lot easier to fix now, especially if it's one thing to have the frets one higher than another, but it's another to have them not in place. And it's a lot harder to fix that later. You don't want to be pulling frets later if you could help it. And now we're going to go high-speed mode again, because it's just the only way to get you through this without having you planted watching the video all day long. No one's going to do that. I don't do that. But it's just wash, rinse, repeat. That's all we do. Is just same thing over and over, till you get down to the 24th and call it done. Speaking of 24th, if you notice I put a little block under it to make sure that I didn't crumple that. I don't know why I did an overhang on this fretboard. Now look at this trick. See that glue? It's really thin CA, and it just dribbles right down the edges of the frets. But as I was lamenting, I'm not sure why I did this this fretboard this way. I could have done that heel all the way over, and I probably will on the next one. So that makes it really cool, because Jeremy's going to get something very special with this guitar. It's going to be a true one-of-a-kind. Aside from being prototype, it's, I'm learning my lessons off this one. So I think next one I make is, I'll have that neck shoulder go all the way under the fretboard, and then I'll make a different base, a plate. When I cut my neck pocket, it'll be different. Now you guys have seen me do this before. It's just one of the many ways I like to carve necks. Sometimes I do this just because I can. I've got my barn door open, and I could pull that sander out a little bit. It gives me room. And then I could just have my way at it. As you can see, it makes a mess. I don't know any way to carve necks that doesn't make a mess. Even when I use the Shinto rasp, it makes a mess. But it's a fun thing. I think I like this making necks more than anything. Now here I'm just using that bar just to make sure everything's nice and straight. And flipping it around, getting a feel for it. Now I'm making sure they get the heel just the right size and it's flat. Don't want that thing wobbling in the neck pocket. And now back to the headstock. Now this is a fun one. This is going to have some ears, so I'm going to be cutting some cut-offs, making them fit. What I did is, you didn't see on camera, was I put that template up against the headstock and then put the piece of wood behind it and traced out the part that I need to cut. And here I am cutting it. I'm trying to trim them down. They don't have to be exact, just kind of close so you don't have too much hanging over and wobbling. Now here I'm just applying glue on it. I've already sanded them nice and flat. And then I'm just going to tape them on there. The fit of these is so good, and that Meranti is just taking that glue really well that I don't need to put a lot of pressure on them. Just tape it up. The trick is to let it sit overnight, or at least a couple hours. It's just I happen to be doing that later in the day, so let it sit overnight. As you can see by the glare, I've got my barn doors open again, and it is bright outside. So sorry for the lighting. And now I found rather than messing with the router, I'd just rather shape this on the sander. And now I'm getting the final shape down, getting it to, I think we're shooting for about 15 millimeters. But I'm going to leave it a little bit thick yet because I like to drill the tuner holes while it's still nice and thick. Again, just in case I get any blade drift or tear out, then I could easily sand it back off. Uneven yet. Let's even it up, James. Come on. So what I did, I rounded up all the grommets for the tuners, and now I'm going to figure out how I'm going to set them. And in case you're wondering why I don't just design this stuff ahead of time, well, I kind of did. I did my own way. I didn't do it with any type of CAD system where everything's all laid out exactly to the measure of the millimeter. Did like a Photoshop kind of estimate of what it might look like. So what I'm doing is I'm laying these out so that the grommets just barely touch the lines. And hopefully you can see that really well. So there you have it. So what I've done is I just laid the grommets out so that they just barely touch those lines. So we've got, you know, the first string, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Now what I'll be doing is measuring these to get an even distance between these three. And then these, I'll keep them about the same distance, but also kind of eyeball and look for aesthetics, what's going to be a happy medium there. If I did it just on measurement, it may not look that good. Right now, it almost looks pretty good the way it is, but I think this center one's got to go a little bit that way, but not much. So we'll take a look at it, and we'll make some marks. So I'm looking at 1 5/8 is what I'm trying to get at for the centers. And I'm just marking them on each of the lines that represent the strings. And then I'm just going to do the good old-fashioned poke a hole and then drill. There we go. So what I like to do is start with the little bit first. And you see what I've got there is I took my little square apart, and I'm just using this base unit as kind of line up and make sure that I'm going in straight. And it works really well, especially if you don't go too fast. Just those little bits will heat up, so just stop a little bit, cool it off, then do it, and look, beautiful. All right, now we've got those guide holes,
Now what's really good is once we've got those to where we like them on both sides, now what we could do is use our Forstner bit. And here's a trick I've learned is don't go all the way. That is also one of the tricks as a way to not mess it up, get tear out. But it's also a great way to keep from getting too much drift. Again, we're only going to go part way through. About like that. Then we're going to flip it over and do it this way. Now here's where it gets tricky. It doesn't hurt to kind of line it with your fingers, make sure that you're even on track. I'll do that. It looks really good. This is probably going to bust it right out of there now. Now with this one. Oh, real nice thin. Oh yeah, these are spot on. Just do it, finish it out. Hey! Like a little blade drift. There you go, look at that. Whoo! So yeah, see how that kind of got a little tear out there? No biggie, because that's the side actually I want to cut out the most. That's why I went this way to finish up. Because I like the bottom part. We want to keep the bottom part, but it's the top part that we're going to slice out. Beauty. Okay, so that part's done. And now, let's go ahead and make our measurements for slicing off that top. All right, that's good enough. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just score it. Okay, come back and do a little scrimshaw. Okay.
Just trying to get just a nice even feel to it. And what I really want to do is, now I'm going to take a little bit off that volute there, but I just want to make sure I have good access through that truss rod hole, that access hole right there. So just make sure that we can get in with the wrench. So I'm just carving it down. I will be cleaning that up later with the file. And that looks good. Now I'll probably just use the Shinto on this, some sandpaper, and just go from there. You've seen me sand things before. So from here, we're going to get the neck all cleaned up, oiled up, and go. Please click the like button, share with friends, and if you're not a subscriber already, please do so. It helps out a lot. Thank you.